But
One.
go. Can I say something? So,
Yeah, you're welcome to.
yeah. So this is No Scurvy here, the podcast that we've committed to doing 2 episodes of that is designed um, to talk about how we swashbuckle across the high seas without our teeth falling out. Is that a good intro?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How are you feeling, man?
Yeah. Neither of us have ever had scurvy.
That
It's
is
true.
correct.
We
And
never
I also
have,
don't know.
and
I also don't know anybody that has had it.
we've never had it. Um, which is kind of amazing. I know it's so common these days. But yeah. Hey. So Alex, you had a topic.
Yeah. So I want to pose a question to you, but I want to pose a question to you today. Um,
Yeah.
in your opinion, are self-help books actually helpful?
I think they are in the beginning of your career. And I think they're very helpful in the beginning. So I read a ton of self help books
Hmm.
early, well, in college, right?
Yeah.
Like in the early days when I was turning myself into someone who maybe wasn't as outgoing or wasn't as confident
Right.
into someone who is more gregarious, outgoing, driven, what have you.
Hmm.
I th- I think that there are topical books that are very helpful. So, say if you're trying to learn a specific targeted skill,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's considered self help or a skill based learning.
What is a self-help book exactly? Do we
I
know
have
what
no
the
idea. Well,
definition
are
of
we
that is?
thinking of the same thing? What do you think of self
I
help
don't
books?
know.
So,
I don't. I
when I
always call anything. Go ahead.
when I think of a self help book, I think of a
Yeah.
Tony Robbins type of thing.
Okay.
But I'm but that that more so is from the motivational side. I read tons of business
Okay.
books and tons of topical based books. What is your take? I want to hear it.
Ooh, you know what? Maybe I have a misunderstanding of the whatever the genre name. I've always grouped in my head self-help books as being anything that almost like learning based, where you can
Oh,
someone's trying to teach you about life, as opposed to now that you mention it, I think a lot of people maybe accurately think of self-help books as being motivational books. Is that the same thing?
let's Google this.
I just realized that I just started googling. I just realized I don't know what the actual genre definitions of these after I asked you that question. Um,
Yeah,
like
let's
what would
Google.
a
I'm googling. Oh, yeah.
like
You Google self help. I'm gonna Google self help. Self.
like if you're reading as you're googling this, if you're like reading a book about how to be an amazing businessman, is
Yeah,
that a
that's
self-help book or is that considered like an educational book?
that's. You know what? A self help book is one according to the Wikipedia. If you ever,
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's a new website. Wikipedia.org.
Yeah, I've heard of that. It's
It's new,
a
right?
good pirate. It's a good pirate's resource.
It's new? Okay. So, a self help book is one that is written with the intention to instruct its readers on solving personal problems.
Personal problems.
Oh, you know what?
Okay.
Then I love self help books.
You know what? I think there's a
Yeah, I'm all about it, man. I think change change my tune. I I thought when they said self help, that was primarily the motivational type of stuff. I realize now that yes, self help books are very, very, very important.
This is part of the reason I wanted to ask you this question, is it
Yeah,
because I think people have these when you say self help book, people have this instinctive reaction because there's all of
that
this bad um, negative association with like motivational books, which I kind of share as well. And it sounded like you had some of that. So I think I've recommended um, what I'm going to hopefully now accurately refer to as self-help books to other people, and they've said, I don't read books like that. I think they're bogus. And there's something to that because there is a lot of, I don't know, in my opinion, bogus motivational type stuff out there. But yet, I love self-help books. I've read so many self-help books that have really changed my thinking on things. So that's kind of funny that we just literally had to Google that definition. So you said you love self-help books.
I do, man. And honestly, okay, so let me hear this.
Yeah.
Do you think that people have a natural bias against the genre because they think that when we are referring to self-help books, we're referring to the razzmatazz, purely motivational,
Like just
stuff?
make you feel good. Like kind of
Yes.
The Secret, if you've heard of that book.
Yeah, which hey, I read
But
that. I read that, beginning of my career, and in a string of other related books, and it was very helpful for my mindset. Right.
all right,
But that was very. What's that?
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, that helped me develop the mindset that I have
Okay.
now.
Isn't that kind of one of those books that kind of fits into that description of like, you just called it
Motivation.
razzmatazz. I don't know. Yeah.
Razzmatazz. Yeah, and I think most people they think that that's what self help is, and in fact, that's kind
Right.
of what I thought until reading the
Right.
definition just now. Um,
I feel like a self-help book can be maybe any kind of book that's written, like you don't have to go to take a college course on something. You can like read this book and learn something about life. But it could be like any kind of topic. It could be about like, you know, redoing the floors in your house or something like that.
yeah,
Um,
you know what? Now, maybe, yeah, I'm all about self help books.
yeah, me too.
I mean, it's instructional reading. You know,
Yeah.
I am so my reading habits are I generally listen to nonfiction audiobooks throughout the day or when I go on walks.
Hmm.
And those are primarily skill based things I'm trying to learn or topics
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn, or maybe a business biography. And then before bed, I read fiction.
Hmm.
Um, what is it like for you? Is there anything, is there any specific self help book recently you've read that comes to mind? And it sounds like you've recommended something to someone recently.
As far as recently, this wasn't really a self help book. It was kind of a quasi memoir, but there was some self help elements to
Yeah.
it. I read, and I mentioned this to you. I read a book called Trailblazer by Mark Benioff, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, the founder of Salesforce.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of really captivating information about how he built Salesforce. He and his co-founders built Salesforce as a just intensely values-driven company, and
Right.
he believes that that's a huge part of the success of the company is how everything they do is informed by their values as people. So I don't know if that was truly a self-help book. It had a lot of memoir to it, but there have been, books I've read in the past that really I read at like a critical moment in life, and I
Me
was
too.
really struggling with something, and it kind of helped change my mindset to guide me in the direction that I really need to go, and really made a big difference in my life. And I think first time I ever read a self-help book, my mom got me when I was graduating for college. I think it was something I forget what it was called, but it was just like basic advice about how to, become an adult after being a child for 18, 20 years, whatever. But then after that, I probably would have never picked up another self help book, but you gave me some books on investing in real estate, and
Yeah.
that kind of started to pique my interest in just sort of educational reading.
Hmm.
What was your first self help book that you read, if you remember?
Ooh. Okay. So my first man, and I got. By the way, this conversation, I'm gonna commit to picking up one more on the motivational side, self help book, to see if
Okay.
my bias against them to get rid of my bias against them. By the way, I'm gonna do this. Just side note. So
I should do the same thing because I probably have a non-legitimate bias against it as well. I think to be honest, Tony Robbins kind of turned me off to the motivational stuff, but I haven't really investigated it more deeply.
Yeah, I think that I'm gonna pick one up. Yeah. First, okay, so self-help books. One of the first books that I read, two books early in college. I'm not sure which one I read first, but I think the one I read first was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and that was gifted to me by Joe Norman. So Joseph Norman, who we had on the Scurvy cast.
He's a good man.
A couple of weeks ago.
Pirate.
Doesn't have scurvy either, that man. Yeah, so that was huge to me. It breaks out, the different quadrants of whether you are owning a business, working in a business, what have you. And then my dad gave me the book, The Success System That Never Fails, by W. Clement Stone, his former boss. And I read those two books, I remember, right in the beginning of freshman year. Those were some early ones for me. What about you?
Yeah, just the ones I mentioned. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I think was probably the second book I read, and that was one of the ones that you gave me, the second self-help book I read.
Yeah.
So that was possibly even the one Joe gave you, you lent to me as well.
Huge.
2 or 3 years ago, I was having a moment where I was very unhappy with, probably about 3 years ago, very unhappy with some things in life that I was just kind of had been accepted as part of my life. Some chronic pain issues, some work stuff that I had just accepted was sort of my lot in life. And that sounds silly in hindsight to say that, but I read this book that the basic thesis of the book was, if you are suffering from something that you're very unhappy with, and you've been suffering with that for a long time, and you're kind of trapped in this prison, it's really your own choice, and you're continuing to be in that prison, I guess, because you've kind of put yourself there, and you're not willing to get out of it. You're not willing to do what it takes to get out of it, and that sounds so obvious. But something about how the way the book was written and the psychology kind of brought into the explanations, and it's like you can give the soundbite, you can say this is what this book is about, and it's like, oh yeah, well, of course, obviously. But then you read a whole book about something like that, and it can really fundamentally change your viewpoint on how you're processing a problem. So that book, I read that book, happened to read that book at just a critical time where I actually needed to get out of a rut.
Amazing.
And it helped give me the courage to make some very difficult decisions that ended up not being difficult at all. I thought they were difficult decisions. And my life changed radically as a result of that. And I don't know if I would have been able to get there as quickly or as effectively without the help of that book.
Amazing.
So I don't know. That might have been a motivational book or a self-help book. I don't know. It's kind of blurry. I think at this point, my conclusion has been for a long time that reading books that are attempting to teach me something, I don't have to take the lesson that it's trying to give me, but, it's like we can learn so much from these books, and it's a mistake to ignore them.
Yeah, I've had the belief since college, Alex, that sometimes a book finds us at the right time. And it's almost a mythical thing where we can walk into a bookstore, and maybe there's something that we are wrestling with or something that we're thinking about that's in our think tank, and we'll just zone in on that book, and it finds us at the right time. And I've had so many of those over the years. It pops up across your plate at the right time. I haven't had one in a while. It sounds like that was huge for you, though. That was huge. I want that. I want another one of those books that finds me at the right time. Like, piping in, man.
You have to have a really big problem for that to happen.
Actually, you know what one has found me at the right time is
What's that?
Tony Robbins' book on health,
Okay.
which I'm reading right now. So that has found me at the right time, to be perfectly honest with you.
What's that book called?
Let me look it up.
Okay.
I'm good with. I like reading books, but I often forget the title, so it's very interesting.
Tony Robbins' book on health.
I think it's
'Cause,
life. I think it's Life Force. Life Force.
Life Force. All right. Just because we've talked about this, and I think you mentioned this last week as well, I'm going to pick this book up and read it as well and give Tony Robbins another shot here.
It's so good. This is less motivational. It's more informative. Strictly
Hopefully
informative.
research based.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Sounds good. What else are you reading right now besides that Life Force book?
Yeah, I just finished. So from the fiction side, I just finished 3 books on running. So the three most amazing books on running, in my opinion, Once a Runner, Again to Carthage, and the name of the book in the beginning. Let's see, John L. Parker books. Racing in the Rain. So these are fiction books. It is a fictional account of this runner, and the author wrote these over the course of, say, 50 years, I think. So he wrote the first one in the late 70s. One of them, I guess it'd be over the course of 45 years. One of them in the early 2000s, and another one somewhat recently. It's a fictional account of this runner. It is the best running book out there. It is beautiful. I think it would resonate with anyone who even doesn't run. But it's all about his journey through the process of this endeavor. So that has, I think, the Tony Robbins book plus reading that, rereading those 3 books. I've been running way more recently and exercising way more recently. Every day. I'm addicted to exercise again.
Yeah.
So I've been doing it every day and eating healthier. I have a bunch of other positive habits in place. So I think that those have all hit me at the right time. But I just finished the John L. Parker books, the running books, and I picked up this science fiction book called The Neuromancer. Have heard a lot about it. It's a sci-fi book, and it's taking a little bit for me to really get into it.
Yeah.
I need to I think muscle through the first few chapters in order to get in the flow.
That's what you want to be doing, is forcing yourself to read.
Yeah.
You don't find interesting.
While going to bed. No, I do believe very strongly. Okay, so want to do.
Yeah.
First off, I want to hear what you're working on now. But second, I believe very strongly that if a book isn't resonating with you, just put it down.
Yeah, 100%.
Even if you've spent $15 on that book,
Yeah.
if you're working through it, and you're having to muscle through, even if you're 3/4 of the way through, and you're finding yourself not enjoying picking it up,
Yeah.
just put it down, man. Put it away.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. There's a million good books out there. You know, you don't need to finish one just because you've got it. Especially if you can borrow books from the library for free. I mean, it's like, what's the point? I mean, I get it if you're spending $20 on a book, but I just don't spend money on books anymore, I have to say.
Fair point. Fair point.
Cool. Well, this has been a really interesting. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about book-wise?
Well, okay, hey, so what audiobooks are you listening to right now?
I am, kind of by coincidence, I am reading the second of 2 completely unrelated books, but both about women suffering from abuse.
Oh.
So the one I just finished was written by an African woman, part of a member of the Maasai tribe in Kenya, and her experience escaping female genital mutilation. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Which is like, it's not something you hear about that often over here, but it's millions and millions and millions and millions of women have been, had these procedures done, not in sanitary ways that have removed parts of their sexual organs.
Yeah.
and just like her basically growing to be a person who was a champion for discontinuing that practice all over the world, because it happens in all across Africa and Middle Eastern countries and different places. So it was like hard to read, but a really incredible book.
Wow.
It was called I think I just had it pulled up in case you asked me, just so I can mention it.
Please.
The Girls in the Wild Fig Tree, that book was called.
Okay.
So completely by coincidence, I also just borrowed another book that popped up into my feed with the New York Public Library, called Know My Name by a woman named Chanel Miller.
Okay.
And she was for the longest time anonymous, but she was part of this big news story. I don't know if you remember this from, I think this says it was like 2009, so it was like a while ago, or 11, 12, 13, 14, something like that, early 2010s.
Yeah.
Where she was raped by a Stanford student, Stanford University, at a fraternity party, and it got into the big news story and kind of made some waves within the whatever movement. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
A movement regarding women and sexual harassment, essentially,
Right.
and being victims of rape and sexual assault. So this is also a very hard to read memoir, but it's really eye opening to see the whole thing. She's like revealing herself as the person that was, the victim in that case, and telling her story. So it's really a really, really good book. Not in the self-help genre.
Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk? This might be another podcast, but a really good book that I read a few months ago. The author, his name, Alexander Hillis. Speaking of books, I mean, we don't have to discuss that now. We can bring that up another time.
I mean, we can talk about it. Was there a question you had about it, or
You wrote a memoir.
you just wanted to bring it up and give me credit for that?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
I did, man. Hey, you know what? Yeah, let's just talk about it real quick. Yeah, so I wrote a memoir about my mental health journey, essentially, in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And Ben, you have been my one and only reader. You were nice enough to kind of read through it and give me your opinion, and you're very positive about it. And I am working on trying to publish it. I've now submitted it to 5 literary agents, and gotten 1 rejection so far. I'm looking forward to getting more rejections, as I mentioned, because in the publishing world, my understanding is you just got to be ready to get rejected by everybody and submit to hundreds of literary agents if necessary to try and find someone to represent.
I love that.
Book. So I'm doing that in a very slow way.
Love that. I love that.
Yeah.
It's so good. I really enjoyed that book, and I'm not just blowing smoke. I read it, I started it, and once I got into it, I ripped through it while on a flight. And I usually don't read through books that fast. So It was really good, very, very enjoyable. And I kept on just clipping out, pieces from it that I enjoyed. Yeah, that's a good book. Maybe we can have another I think let's have another podcast specifically about the process of writing a memoir. I would love to discuss that. I think that's
sounds good.
Yeah.
And launching creative projects in general, that'd probably be good.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we wrap this one up and do another one?
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.